Hey guys, this is Jay Calder with Jay Unboxing, and today we're going to ask and answer the question as to whether or not Tyson Fury will actually be retiring. And for a little bit of a setup here, over the weekend we had Tyson Fury defending his ring and WBC heavyweight championship of the world against Dillian Whyte, and shortly after the fight announced to some degree his retirement from the sport. Now this wasn't much of a surprise, as he had kind of alluded to this potentially happening before the Whyte encounter. However, once he said it after the fight, when you kind of think perhaps there's going to be maybe another announcement or some other move that's going to be put forth on display there, that didn't really happen. He just sort of leaned into that retirement. So, with all of that kind of in mind, I'm going to get into whether or not I think that's actually going to happen. Now, the short answer for me is no. Not now. It's just not what I see happening. However, first let's kind of look at why, some of the reasons he actually might retire. Is it going to get bigger than being undefeated, capturing the most respected prize in the sport, conquering America and its champion in Deontay Wilder, effectively 3 times in a row, and then selling a record 94,000 tickets in your homecoming at Wembley Stadium? That's a legitimate question you have to ask yourself, but my answer to that would be yes, I think it can be. So for starters, if he were to actually have his hybrid battle or just some straight-up boxing encounter with Francis Ngannou and defeat the MMA world's biggest and baddest champion, then finish his career with total unification against either Anthony Joshua or Alexander Usyk, whoever happens to win that rematch, that's definitely bigger, especially because the latter of those two bouts could sell just as many tickets, if not an outright 100,000 tickets, and set yet another record. To go out in that fashion, I think would be bigger, to be perfectly honest, and it's big in a couple of ways. So yes, it will bring him more money, and while everyone else wants that bag, I don't think that's really what motivates Fury, but I do think that it matters a little bit. Let's not kid ourselves here, even though I do believe when he says that it's not his biggest motivating factor. It's still important, and we have to acknowledge that. But it's also bigger in terms of historical significance, and Fury is a man that cares about how he will be perceived in boxing. He talks about time after time the history of the sport, quite a bit as a matter of fact. Completely unifying in the 4-belt era and making some of the biggest fights in history will matter to him. Whether or not that's something he's kind of looking at now, long term it's certainly something that he will. And he has to like his chances to some extent. AJ has struggled with Usyk, and Fury version of that to some degree. They share many of the same attributes that give Joshua problems. Fury is just bigger, and even heads up against Usyk, Fury has the size and strength to go with the skill that could trouble Alexander over 12 frames, especially if he's leaning on him and really putting forth those kind of bigger, heavier shots. It could be something that wears on him, no matter how good he happens to be, and that's pretty damn good. Of course, many will say that he's a fairly intelligent guy and he may want to quit while the quitting is good. He even promised his wife, but trust me when I tell you, husbands have broken far worse promises they've made to their wives, and they didn't get paid millions and millions of dollars to do it. She'll find a way to make it through that, I promise you. Besides, Fury is only 33 years of age, and at heavyweight in this day and age, that is just not that old, and he looks to have all of his reflexes and faculties about him. Yes, he was nearly knocked out by Wilder a few times, he said kind of offhandedly, but otherwise, he doesn't take sustained beatings. He is a relatively fresh fighter with the boxing world at his feet at this particular point. What's more, based on previous instances, it feels as though Fury does better when he has something to do. Well, that's a bit unfortunate in his personal life that he suffers from this sort of idle hand syndrome. It indicates to me that he will eventually want to get back into the gym and get to work, if not for his own sanity, unfortunately. But fighters in general have a hard time walking away, especially when they know they have more left in the tank and more left on the table. So often the sport retires its fighters, not the other way around. That isn't because fighters don't know when to say when, it's because they refuse to even acknowledge that conversation. And while Fury has at least given that conversation some thought, he's still a fighting man. He will still have those same desires to prove he's the best. Also, and trust me when I tell you this, Tyson and his team are smart enough to know this, announcing his retirement does a few favors for Fury, even if he has no real desire to actually retire. Firstly, it increases his future offers. People know they have to pay him what he expects, but now it's a bit more to kind of bring him back to boxing, as he's already suggested he's willing to walk away. It also increases demand for him with Fans, because fans typically want what they can have. That's usually how it works. It's also a get out of jail free card if he has a mandatory or contractual agreement he doesn't like. Play the retirement card. When they realize the leverage you have as Fury, you can return to more favorable terms. In all, while I have to give actual retirement for Fury a small percentage of a chance, we're talking less than 1% in my opinion. The odds to me suggest he leads to at least a few more fights in his career considering the circumstances. The money, the lifestyle, the significance historically, the idle hand syndrome that Fury can sometimes suffer from all lead to the big man stepping back into the ring one more time. But of course, that's just my take. I'd love to hear your guys' thought on this as well in the comments section below. Let me hear your thoughts, all that kind of stuff on it. What do you think of his performance? Would love to hear that as well. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, follow, comment, all that good stuff down in the comment section below. Follow me on Twitter at jcalderon_JOB. You can email me at junboxing@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you there. Also, be sure to visit junboxing.com for scheduled results, betting odds, rankings, more, all that good stuff. I will also be leaving a link in the description box for my Fighter Grade series that I released a couple of days ago over the weekend. You can check that out as well. And as always, until next time.